Okay, the next recipe is more of a vegetable rather than the fruit that we just made with Beth. And it's a homemade salsa, and we call it our favorite because we did a survey of all the cancer center staff, and we did the chemo area, we did radiation, and we did the cancer center. So we had a vote, so this was the most popular combination. So let's go ahead and dig in and get started. And this one is a cooked salsa, and the reason for that is because we want to get those peppers and onions softened. And so we're going to add a tablespoon of oil. If you want to add less, you can, but that's about the right amount to get things sauteed. And while Beth's doing that, I'm going to start with the onions. But before I do that, I want to show you a tip that I heard somewhere, I don't know where, but Beth's daughter Sydney had the same thing, that the reason our eyes are affected by onions when we cut them is that chemical that's in the onions is attracted to water. And what's the first water that it comes in contact with? Our eyes. So if you wet your chin, some of the people that I heard this from said, put a wet paper towel on your chin. I just dipped my chin in water and it worked perfectly. But you can't just blot it, you gotta get it pretty wet. So we're just gonna go ahead, we're dicing up the onion pretty small. We started with a tablespoon of oil, and then I'm finishing the last half cup of onion. And again, I dice things pretty small, just like Beth did, because when you're making something like a salsa, you want little bits, you don't want huge chunks of ingredient. So Beth's gonna keep that going and sauteing while I finish this onion. How you do an onion, it's up to you. I've never figured out the perfect way. But this we do try to be a little more careful just because we want that smaller size. So you want little tiny bits. What level of heat, Beth, do you think is best to start with when you're sauteing? I was thinking a medium, but what do you think?
I think you want to saute at a medium heat.
Or maybe a little higher?
Maybe. Yeah, you really can let it take its time and just kind of get to where it's cooked through and kind of translucent is what you're looking for. It's really to kind of mainly, there's a lot of salsa recipes that use raw onions and raw peppers, so.
Are you ready? This is our other half cup of onion.
There we go. Add the rest of our onion in there.
I'll let you finish that, Beth. And then while Beth's keeping that going so it doesn't burn, I'm going to use our Poblano pepper, and I've cut up half of it, but I wanted to show you what a Poblano looks like. It's quite a bit bigger than your jalapeno peppers, but they're considered much more mild. And cutting it in half, you see it's kind of like a red pepper. You've got the seeds in here, and then you've got little, what would you call it? Ribs. And we remove those, so that's what I'm going to show you right now. For the top, I just pull that out, and then I use my flexible knife and then pull the ribs off, clicking every so often to get any seeds that might be hiding in there. And again, this is a mild pepper, but we've been taking the ribs out when we did our recipe testing. And then what I do to make it smaller is I just do thin ribbons, or as thin as I can get them, and then cut across. And it makes it a little bit easier to get the small size that you're looking for. And again, I think in a salsa, it's nice just to have everything minced up pretty small, don't you think, Beth?
Yeah.
What kind of, when you make salsa, Beth, what do you use? Do you use jalapenos, or do you use a poblano or some other kind of pepper?
You know, I had never had, I don't think I'd had poblano salsa before we did our trial samples. And I really liked it, actually. We picked that one as our favorite, Mary Beth and I did, but it was also the winner overall of our salsas that we tried, and Mary Beth had made 4 different kinds, and several people preferred the poblano. So it does have a little mild heat, and it's really tasty, just something different. Peppers have a lot of vitamin C, so they
Oh,
are
that's a good point.
quite good. And some of the other ones, the colored peppers have some other things too. So
Now, a couple of seeds have shown themselves, and just pick those out. I don't think it's a problem if they're technically in the salsa, but
No.
personally, I would rather not have
Yeah.
any seeds.
yeah, the seeds have quite a bit of heat. That's where a lot of the heat is in the pepper. So if you're
Yeah.
liking mild things, and you could always substitute a bell pepper if you're not a spicy person, and if you
That's a
love
good point.
spice, you can add a jalapeno to this, or some other hot pepper that you have.
Yeah, it's definitely a taste. Any of these recipes can be modified to your tastes. And there's a couple other things I'm going to talk about as we're making our tortilla chips in a little bit, about modifications that you can do. Okay, there's the last of our poblanos. And then hopefully the rest of it's getting pretty well cooked. It's getting, the onions are getting nice and
They are getting nice and
translucent.
cooked, yeah. So they'll be nice and soft, so,
yep.
yeah.
The recipe, Beth, says medium-high heat, so that's the official word. So we're adding the onion, the poblano, and the garlic to the pan. And I did want to do a little bit quick, I did 2 of the cloves of garlic already, but we've done this before, shown you how to do garlic, but we still wanted to do it. And of course, I get one that's being stubborn. And
Well,
not
here.
here. I'll let you, if you
You
want
want
to
me to
fiddle
do
with
this
that.
one?
Yeah.
So when you got a garlic, you can do, the first thing is you can
Oh,
take this.
okay,
and
I was going to do that later, but that's
sometimes
better.
Oh, you want
No, that's better.
Okay.
That's better.
So take this, take a knife, and instead of whacking it really hard, so you
Which
you
is
just-
what I was gonna
just
do.
Put your weight on it, lean on it,
Oh, that's a
and
lot
just
less
smush
messy.
it like that. And you might turn it over and do it again, or if you can get a
So
nice
just
flat.
using it to flatten it a little
Yeah, and
bit.
then it'll just kind of pop out of this.
Oh, that's a
thing.
good way to do it. I always try to peel it first and then smash it. So we're going to dice this up
Real small.
finely.
Okay.
I know the first time I made it, I did not, and I noticed there were some rather pungent bites where I hadn't diced it quite as small as I could have.
Cooking
But
the garlic
hey.
helps with the bite too, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
I do make fresh salsa sometimes, but it is strong.
Beth, if you want to put that in, that's the last of our ingredients there.
Great.
Okay,
Now are we gonna add the cilantro later at the end?
yeah, that's a little bit
That's
later.
Okay.
So, we are ready to add our tomatoes. Now you'll
Fantastic.
notice rather than fresh tomatoes, we are using canned tomatoes, and we wanted to make a salsa that you could use all year round. The other advantage, go ahead Beth, if you want to show them what's in that, what kind of tomatoes that is, tomatoes.
Yeah, this is the Petite diced tomato, and just like Mary Beth was talking about, kind of it's nice to have kind of small pieces for a salsa. Then
Yeah.
this little tiny dice really helps, and we're gonna
Yeah.
use a whole can, right, Mary Beth?
Yeah,
Okay.
the 14 ounce, the small can.
With the juice and everything.
Yeah,
Yep.
and feel free to double or triple this, I mean, if you had a big enough pan.
Sure.
Now, the reason we picked the Petite diced and then the crushed is, I said to Beth, there's one thing I don't like about salsa is that it doesn't stick to the tortilla chip as much. So this was a thicker sauce, and we're gonna use our 14 ounce can because crushed doesn't usually come in the smaller can. So
Okay.
just use it as our measuring guide, is another 14 ounces of the crushed tomatoes. So that should thicken things a little bit more.
Yeah, it's got a really nice consistency.
And again, if you like it thinner, feel free to add.
Now, what do you think about making this with garden tomatoes? Would that be an option?
That is an option. In our recipe, we've got a note that if you want to make it with fresh, because fresh, you're going to have more juice and will be a little more thin as a result. They recommend in this recipe that you use half fresh and half canned crushed. So again, the canned crushed will be the thick part, and then the cooked will be the the fresh part of it. Now, you can also use an immersion blender. You want to talk about that? I know some people may not know what that is, because I didn't when I,
Yeah, so
many
it's
years.
It's also known as a stick blender or handheld blender, and you just plug it in and you can put it down into your pot, even on your stove while you're cooking. And you just want to make sure, if you are using it, that you get it down low and that you don't turn it on until it's all the way down in there, because otherwise it can make a mess. But they work really well. They can blend and puree as well as a blender. And that would be if you like the smooth style salsa, then you can do that. One of the nice things about cooked salsa is that you can do more with it. You can can this if you wanted to with proper canning techniques, and you could also freeze this too, right, Mary Beth?
Yeah, because everything is cooked. If you just use a fresh salsa, you cannot usually freeze it because it isn't as stable. What I'm doing here is I'm just squeezing the lime, and I liked Beth's suggestion better, but I'm a wuss, so I'm gonna use the squeezer. And the recipe calls for just 1 tablespoon of, Beth, if you wanna
Lime juice. Okay.
go ahead.
All right. Go ahead. Or you want to add?
Nope,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Okay.
And then the last thing,
Okay. And I did turn
Is our
off the
cumin.
heat, just so you know, because once we're adding the lime and the cilantro and the.
well, we're supposed to cook it for 1 to 2 minutes,
Oh,
stirring
thank you. I'm gonna
constantly,
turn it
and
back
then
on
remove.
Okay.
And then we'll add our cilantro after we remove it from the heat.
Okay.
The cumin we found in our recipes. Come on in. We've got some staff members that are going to be our tasters. So Nancy Yaisley's going to be our first one. And this is a 1/4 teaspoon of cumin was the right amount for our taste testers. So we're almost ready for you, Nancy.
Very good.
And our last thing is to, after we remove it from the heat, Beth, you want to shut that off, and we'll add 1/3 cup of cilantro. Now I want to show you before. Cilantro comes like this. To me it looks a lot like parsley. And the tip that Beth's always given me, which works great, is to start at the opposite end and then just pull down, and it strips off mainly the leaves, and you don't get big pieces of stem. And then just dice it up, and then by the magic of television, there we go, 1/3 cup, and that's the last of our ingredients before we add our salt and pepper.
Okay.
Go ahead and have a seat, folks. We'll bring over the samples. And okay, salt and pepper. Last things, Beth, to add. We did 1/2 teaspoon of each, so let's go ahead and, now you shouldn't measure it over that, so I'm not going to do that.
There you go.
1,
Okay.
and pepper. It's nice and quiet now that there you go. And that's the last of the ingredients. Cool it and refrigerate it at least an hour, and you can also freeze it in an airtight container. So let's go ahead. It hasn't had the time to meld like we usually like, but I think you guys will find that you still like it. So
Maybe we can start with the fruit.
why don't we do
Let
that?
this cool a little
Well,
bit.
yeah, let's do the fruit, and I'm going to show real quickly how to do the homemade tortilla chips.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay? So I think let's clear things off a little bit, Beth. These are not real complicated. This isn't in the ingredients, but if you want to, I hate cleaning things up, so I always spray my cookie sheets. And we're going to use a corn tortilla for the tomato salsa, and I always try to, and I'm cutting them the same size as the ones we did with Beth. And again, you can cut first, or you can daub. Oh boy, I'm going to have unusual looking ones, but I guess they'll still eat them, I'm guessing.
Looks fine to me.
Do you want to, let's go ahead and blot. We're blotting with a combination of lemon juice, and I'm looking for our paper. There we go.
Okay.
So this is a mixture of, let me check the amount, a tablespoon of water and 3 tablespoons of our lemon juice that we used, and we're just blotting it. You can use a spritzer if you have one. And then we'll sprinkle it with a combination of the following. I'm going to use this cup. And the topping is made with chili powder, and that is a teaspoon of chili powder. And we'll just mix that together. There's our chili powder. We got a 1/4 teaspoon of cumin. There's my 1/4. And 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And Beth, if you want to mix that together and then just sprinkle it over the chips, that would be wonderful. Okay. Now, I did bring a couple other things. You can make these chips whatever you want. If you like more of that hotness, I'd put more of the chili powder in. You can put onion powder. I did put onion powder on some of the chips I used. You could do pepper, but do whatever you want. And you want to bake it then at 400 degrees, I believe. Nope, 350. 350 degrees for 7 to 8 minutes, and then you want to turn it, rotate it in the oven. And I thought another 8 minutes is going to be way too long, but it was just right. If you don't go the full time, it's tough and chewy rather than dry and crispy. So make sure you follow the time on the recipes that we'll be having available. Perfect. So bake and enjoy, and let's go ahead and go to our tasters and see what they have to say. I think they need to introduce themselves too, because I know people may not know who they are.
Oh, I should have introduced them.
No, that's okay. You are most welcome. This is Connie Diedeker. She's one of our care coordinators. She's been here just a couple years.
On your hand.
No, not at all. But thank you for your concern. I appreciate that. Here you go, Nancy. And once you guys dig in, I know it's warm salsa, but enjoy, and hopefully this is just an idea that you can use for a quick snack or something that you can keep in the refrigerator or the freezer or have at your next party. So,
Yeah.
anything else, Beth?
Fun way to have fruits and vegetables that we're all trying to get more of.
Right. Excellent.